We are going live on YouTube right now as we speak, you guys. All right, awesome. So today we were going to be diving into some YouTube and Google ad creation. There have been some changes on Google's side as far as what we can and can't do. And so I'm putting that training back until next week so that I can prep a little bit more for it, because I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys the most accurate and up-to-date information when it comes to Google and how to utilize their platform to go ahead and target. So we're waiting on one of these lists to go ahead and upload and find all of those individuals. And then there's also some changes to how we can use those lists now. As these platforms continue to change, we're going to adapt and make sure that we're giving you guys the best methods to go ahead and approach these potential buyers or sellers through that platform. And so we'll be covering more on next Tuesday or Thursday regarding YouTube and Google ads. I just want to make sure we're fully prepped for you guys and that we're delivering the most up-to-date and accurate information we can. So today we are going to put a focus on following up with your leads so that you can get the highest level of conversion from those contacts that are coming through your current advertising that you're doing, whether that is through Zillow, Realtor, Homes.com, Google advertising, or if you guys are utilizing Facebook to generate your guys' leads. Also, super excited, today is the 100th video on our YouTube channel. And so we are going to continue to push these live trainings twice a week and keep growing the number of videos that we have and the content that we have out there for you guys. So that's super exciting. Almost forgot about that announcement. Thanks for sending me that text.
100 videos and almost 10,000 video views. We're really proud of that, guys. And yeah, we're just going to continue to try to bring the best content that we can.
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of it, but all I got to say is those are rookie numbers. We're going to pump those up. All right, you guys. So we're going to dive straight into this and get this ball rolling. So when it comes to working internet leads, there's one aspect that is the most important part of all of this, and that is speed to lead. I can't tell you how important this is enough. I can't tell you enough how important this is. When you guys get an internet lead that comes through, let's actually just kind of break this down. So speed to lead is the time that it takes you on average to respond to a prospect from the moment they become an inbound lead. This is the moment when a prospect becomes a lead, can vary, but it's generally when a prospect fills out a demo request or a contact form, right? So how does that apply to us? Typically, the ads that we are running out there where we're generating these buyers and sellers, and what we've been teaching to you guys is going to be a contact form that they're going to be filling out. So a demo request would apply if it was a business like us where we need to bring a client in, we give them a demo of our platform or of what we can do for you from a marketing standpoint. That's what a demo request would look like. For agents, it's all going to be that contact form being filled out. So from the moment that form gets filled out, you have a timer on that lead. You're going to get a notification, whether you're in KV Core or Leads to ROI, you're going to get a notification of that lead coming in. Your response to that lead at this point in time is extremely crucial. And if you find yourself being in a position to where you're an agent that can't make that speed to lead a priority, or if you have other things that you're doing because you're an agent, you're busy, you got a ton of business going on, you may need to hire an ISA or assign someone to follow up with these contacts within a very timely manner. So 67% of buyers and sellers work with the very first agent that responds to their first inquiry. So when your lead reaches out to you, and this isn't going to say that, you know, you guys, if you're running ads on Facebook or you're running ads on Google, those leads are exclusive leads. They're coming just to you. But there's nothing that says that that person didn't see an ad from you, fill it out, and then 3 scrolls down, they got another sponsored ad for another realtor, and they clicked on that ad and supplied their information again. So that's why speed to lead is so crucial. Even though your leads from these platforms are exclusive to you, they don't get shipped out to other agents, such as like how Realtor.com does it in certain markets. And I've heard that Zillow is doing that in certain areas. In this case, this is an exclusive lead to you, but that doesn't mean that that lead can't click on another form and submit some information. So it's extremely important that we're calling that lead right out of the gate as soon as we get it in our database, because we can see that you have agents are 7x more likely to qualify leads when reaching out within an hour as opposed to just 1 hour later. So that's again from Harvard Business Review on a call study. So 7% more like 7 times more likely to qualify within an hour. But 67% of those buyers and sellers work with the first agent that responds to it and they chat with. So if I'm a consumer and I fill out multiple forms, I need you to be fast on the phone in order for me to work with you. Otherwise, I'm going to have another agent that calls me or another agent that's prepped with an ISA that's going to call me and they're going to get my appointment. I'm going to end up working with that agent 67% of the time, whoever calls me first. All right. So my recommendations on this, when we kind of looked over all the data and statistics with Premier Agent Concierge, when I was at that big Zillow company, we found that it was actually 2 minutes was the best response time that we had when we were reaching out to those leads. If we called within a 2-minute window, we had a very, very high likelihood of getting that lead on the phone. It was over 50% chance of that lead actually picking up the phone if you're calling within a 2-minute window and getting those folks into a conversation so that we could do a warm transfer directly to an agent. So as soon as you guys get that lead, go ahead and pick up the phone, start dialing it right away. It's going to give you the highest likelihood to convert. All right, sales reps are 21 times more effective when calling within 5 minutes of the prospect's first contact as opposed to calling after 30 minutes. Now, all of these statistics are coming from different areas for the slideshow so that I can give you guys a better representation from a larger pool of data. So this is from a platform called Lead Simple. And so they're showing that sales reps are 21 times more effective when calling within 5 minutes of that prospect's first contact as opposed to calling after 30 minutes. So we've got some interesting statistics here. 7x more likely within the first hour, 21x more likely within the first 5 minutes as opposed to 30 minutes. So this is an even further breakdown between 5 minutes to 1 hour versus just within that first hour. And then your odds of qualifying a lead decrease by 80% after 5 minutes have elapsed. And that's from Vendasta. All right, you're a 10x less likely to have a lead respond if your outreach takes more than 5 minutes. And that's from leadresponsemanagement.org. And then companies experience a 391% increase in lead conversion when responding within 1 minute. So I wanted to make sure that I left it with that very last statistic point on this particular slide because of how powerful that is. All right, 391% increase in lead conversions when responding within 1 minute. So what does this mean? All right, speed to lead. If we really want to break this down, when I submit that form, I'm in the mindset and I'm in the mode of doing that. Over the past 2 years, our attention span has drastically decreased as a populace. And a lot of those factors boil down to what's going on in our current environment and current circumstances. We have just gone through a pandemic. And in that pandemic, more and more folks are working remote and working from home. William and myself have been doing this for 3-4 years. We've been working from home remote. It's normal for us, but it's not normal for your everyday average American. And that has posed a serious challenge. Social media times have drastically increased every single day by unique user. So it used to be an hour and a half of time was spent on social media. Now it's getting closer to 2 or 3 hours per the average person that's on social media and their use every single day. And so what that means is that they're filling out more forms, they're supplying more information, they're getting more calls, they're having more people that are reaching out to them because they're filling out more things. So they're less likely to answer their phone, they're less likely to respond to a text, they're less likely to respond to an email because now they're being more heavily inundated. So catching that lead right in the moment when they submit their information is extremely imperative, because once you get past that 5 minutes, they're going to forget that they filled that form out entirely. Now, again, that's why we have you ask the additional questions for beds, baths, price range, and time frame, is so that when you get them on the phone, you can bring up those fields that they filled out, and you can utilize those so that you can jog their memory and get them thinking, oh yeah, actually I did fill out that form. That's exactly what I'm looking for in a house. I must have done it. and then you can continue your conversation. All right, so speed to lead, key. Once you get that lead, get on the phone. So I pulled some charts and some good graphics. It's a company called Conversionly. They do very similar to what we do right now, and essentially they've covered and broken down this Harvard Business Review into some charts where we can actually see some visuals on the data, which is awesome. And so this just kind of breaks down with number of contacts and number of leads. They've had 9,000 leads essentially in this pool that they contacted for this test. And we found the best time to respond is within 5 minutes. There's a 10x decrease after the first 5 minutes. Now, everybody's going to have different data points and statistics, but what I want to drive home is that everybody is showing that after 5 minutes, we have a significant decrease in conversion on that lead. Now,
I've been doing this for 15 years, and that is very true. After 10 minutes, they've already got 2 or 3 texts from other agents. So the 10-minute mark is critical.
Absolutely. And so when we look at this, contact qualification rates drop drastically in just minutes and continue to decrease over the next few hours. So this is just so that you guys have some visuals on this so that you can actually see some representations from graphs and charts. I found this to be extremely interesting, and it's 100% true to what we have done in our call attempts and what we have found. So the level, as long as that contact is made within that first 5 minutes, your level of answer rate is roughly about 34.73%. And that's actually geared more towards that 2 minutes. If you're calling within a 2-minute window, you're going to have pretty much a 33% chance of getting that lead on the phone. So if you're dialing every single lead, 1 out of every 3 within that first 2 to 5 minutes, you're going to get them on the phone and be able to have a conversation with. The second contact attempt is roughly a 12.65% answer. And so this again was done with this is at 3,700 leads roughly in this particular study. And so at 2 calls, you have a 12.65%, 3 calls, 10.97. What we can see is once we hit the 6 calls, we really start to trail down. And once we hit that ninth contact attempt, very, very low chances beyond 9 contacts for you to actually get that lead on the phone. So again, speed to lead right out of the gate is extremely important. Now, persistence chance of making contact, and this is why we say always make 6 contact attempts, is that once you've contacted that lead 6 times, you have a 90% chance of contacting that lead. You have a 90% chance of them answering the phone, getting them on and chatting with you. And that's through several different case studies that have been put out there. And I can tell you in my experience, when smiling and dialing or reaching out to agents, if I don't make that 6th contact attempt, I know that I'm losing business. So I keep calling up until the 6th. I usually deem it dead after that 6th contact. I may make the 7th or 8th, but 6th is basically where I essentially halt my contacts or my communications, because I found that beyond that 6 calls, it's essentially a dead lead at that point in time. Your average agent is actually only going to make about 3 contact attempts to any lead, and that's over the phone. This next chart that we're going to show you is going to be a breakdown on statistics when it comes to SMS. So when you're sending out text messages. And I loved this section, which was a conversion rates by contact method, whether that was call or SMS, based on those conversion rates. And we can see we have a much higher conversion on calls versus SMS, but it's roughly, right about a 57 to 43% split is essentially what we're looking at here, from 6,290 to 4,224, right? That's just that's just essentially what we're looking at. So if you're only sending out text messages, it's going to drastically decrease your guys' conversion rates versus if you're actually making active call attempts and reaching out to those leads. But ultimately, a mixture of the two is going to provide a much higher level of response for you guys. So first contact attempt, and this is with right about 2,300, 2,250 leads, 20.93%. And again, this boils down to speed to lead. So you want to make sure that that first contact attempt goes out within 2 minutes. All right. At that second contact attempt via text message, 17.03% response rate. And we can see that the statistics on here are quite a bit different from the calls, because at that sixth contact attempt for calls, everything just starts to trail off, right? Well, with text messages, we actually see an increase at that eighth contact attempt, and then we start to see decreases. Contact attempt 9, 10, and then 11 is where we really get to a point to where it's diminishing the level of response on those. Now, there's a reason why we have our contact or our follow-up campaigns go on for a much longer time frame and a much longer period of time, and that's because we actually have leads that will respond to a text message on the 30th attempt 6 months down the road. And so it is important to continue that attempt via text and via email to contact that lead, but your response in getting that lead to actually have a conversation with you drastically drops. I mean, you almost have a zero chance at 14 attempts, but you still may be able to get 1 or 2 out of 100 within that 6 months if you can continue texting them. So what are some key takeaways from this this data that we just took a look at? So best results are seen when contacting the lead in less than 5 minutes. When 6 contact attempts are made via phone call, there's a 90% conversion rate. After the 9th call to a lead, there's a very low chance of contact. SMS see a much higher response rate after 9 contact attempts than calls. And if SMSs and emails are the only method of contact, you're missing out on roughly 57% of conversions on your leads. And then the best follow-up plan is going to include multiple forms of communication. This is going to include calls. This is going to include texts, emails. It's going to include direct messages on social platforms. One thing I'd highly recommend to anybody that's following up with leads, especially if you're getting them from the internet, if you're getting them through a source like Facebook or Instagram, go ahead and send them a connection request or a friend request and send them a message directly on that platform. It can drastically increase the likelihood of getting in communication with those folks. So what are some of the most important metrics that we need to be tracking so that we can maximize our conversion rates? Number one, it boils down to the number of leads that you guys have coming in every single month, right? So if you have a consistent flow of leads monthly, that makes things much easier for you to calculate. So let's just say if you have 100 leads that come in every single month, how many dials are you making to every single one of those leads? And this is daily dials. Out of your daily dials that you're making to your contacts, how many appointments have you set? And then from those appointments, what's the number of buyer agreements or listing agreements that have been signed? And then based on those number of buyer or listing agreements, how many of those folks have we actually closed down? Now, these metrics are extremely important because they're going to help you calculate future income once you begin to start tracking these metrics and really put this into place and into practice. All right. And again, that's exactly what this slide is why it's so important, is that you're going to be able to calculate what your future income is going to be based off of these. So how many dials does it take for you to book an appointment? This is going to vary from person to person, from caller to caller. A lot of this boils down to your skill set once you get that lead on the phone, how well you can overcome objections, and your level of communication to that contact so that you can convert them into an appointment. And the spoiler on this, you guys, making the call about them, their wants, and their needs is going to be a huge differentiator between those that are seeing massive success and those that are not. So the number of dials it takes to generate an appointment can indicate some weaknesses that we may be having in our phone call. All right. The goal is to consistently improve our call skills to convert more leads into appointments. And the number of dials to generate appointments also indicates the number of dials we need to make every single day if we have a goal for a certain number of appointments to be met. All right. Now I'm actually going to open up another one of my slideshows. I think I'm going to move over and add in another slide into this for you guys really quick. Just so that I can give you a little bit more info and break this down a little bit better for you. Give me one moment.
One other thing while he's pulling it up, when you are following up with your leads and you're making those dials, make sure you're always texting and emailing as well. You'll never know what form of media they want to use to communicate. Very few prefer email only. Most will like text. But doing all three just ensures that you're going to capture them if they are capturable. Usually I have one template I use for the day. I blast the email out, make the call, send the text, move on. In a few seconds, I've covered all few bases I needed to cover.
Thanks for adding that in there. Sorry, guys, I've got to find the exact slideshow it was in. It's just going to take me a second. It's my formula for overcoming objections. It's acknowledge, rebuttal, and transition. But I'm just trying to find the actual slide really quick so that I can add this in, because I want to be able to give it to you guys at the end once we complete this this particular slideshow.
Do you ever get the impression that people feel like too much is being, they're being texted and then called and emailed? Like, do they ever think that's too much, or do you not really get that kind of feedback?
I mean, you're going to get that feedback from time to time. I personally see it as a challenge on a daily basis when I'm making calls to have somebody say something off color to me, because that means I'm being persistent and I'm doing what I need to do so that I can, go and close down more business. But you're going to have some folks that out of the gate will feel, hey, you've reached out to me far too many times, or you've contacted me too many times, or I feel like you're spamming me. But at the end of the day, realistically, if we aren't doing the follow-up that we need to do to actually get these folks on the phone and have those conversations with them, we're not only doing a disservice to ourselves and our own pocketbooks, but we're doing a disservice to that person who's in need of help. And so I always look at it from the standpoint of, we're here to help these folks with the largest financial decision that they're making in their life. And so some tenacious follow-up may be required to get them on the phone so that you can get that ball rolling and get those conversations started. So I highly recommend continuing with the persistence follow-up and continue to push those leads as much as humanly possible. But you will get some pushback on that. I'm just going to go ahead and run this in. So formula to overcome objections.
In all my years of dialing, I found it to be a very small percentage of people that respond that way. However, the few, when people do respond after the 5th or 6th attempt, most of the time I'm getting responses is they're glad, because usually they have spoken to a realtor when they first started looking, and that agent is no longer answering their calls or texts. And here I come and they have questions about property, so now I have something to talk about. So I would say probably less than 1% out of 1,000 dials, I'll have someone say something like that I have to overcome. And even then, that usually is somebody I can have a conversation with, and usually ends up becoming a client.
It all really boils down to how you actually manage that conversation. I mean, the biggest part about hitting the phones and being on the phones when you're calling your leads is actually maintaining the control of that call. And so it's extremely important to maintain control of your conversation that you're having with your leads. And there's certain ways that you can do that. We'll dive into that a little bit further on. So I'm actually going to just copy and paste this from here. So when you acknowledge, so there's a specific formula that we have here that can help you guys overcome virtually any objection that you get when you're on the phone. Right. So one objection that you guys may receive when you hop on with a client and they answer the phone is, I filled that form out by mistake, or I don't remember filling out that form. And so essentially in your acknowledgement of their objection, oh, okay, so you mean to tell me that you may have filled out a form, but you don't remember doing it, right? And I'll say, yeah, I don't think I filled out the form. And then you'd reply with, well, our records indicate that you're looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house between 500 and 600,000, and you were looking to move within the next 1 to 3 months. Is that you? And then they'll come back and say, oh yeah, that's definitely me. And then your transition would be, okay, awesome. Let's go ahead and dive into exactly what you're looking for in a home so that I can be of best service to you, right? So this is a general formula that you guys can use to overcome essentially any objection that you guys receive, whether this is when you're at the negotiating table with a listing agent, or you are the listing agent working with a buyer agent, vice versa. Acknowledge, rebut, transition. This is a fantastic tool that I've used to increase my conversion rate when I'm on the phone significantly with those that I am working with and chatting with on that call. So you guys will get the objection formula once we go ahead and release this slideshow out to everybody once it's complete and once we've done this full series. So you also want to track how many of your appointments turn directly into buyer or seller agreements. So again, this is a testament to how well we did with our appointment. If you're getting a lot of appointments, but you're not getting the contract signed to work with the lead, there may be a couple of things that we did not uncover in the meeting. And here are some of the things that are going to be important to do on every single appointment. Number one, building rapport. I can't tell you guys how important this is. Building rapport is going to build trust. And it's also going to build that level of professionalism so that your lead is going to understand, hey, not only is this a good person, it's somebody who understands this business, and that I feel confident that I'm going to be able to work with and purchase a home through them. And again, being that this is somebody's largest financial decision that they're going to make in their life in most cases, we want to make sure that we're building that trust and bringing down those barriers right out of the gate so that we can start getting into the importance of what we need to find out from that client so that we can help grow, right? Profiling and discovering. The last slide that I have on this for you guys today is a format that you guys can follow for profiling and discovering your leads. I am a firm believer in profiling and discovering when you're working with a contact or a lead. Essentially what this is going to do is just kind of peel the onion while you're getting to know them and finding out more about what their wants, needs, and their capabilities are, right? So this isn't to just steer this conversation in a way that says, okay, you want to buy a $400,000 house, you work at McDonald's, let's go ahead and start looking at properties, right? No, we want to make sure that we have begun that vetting process. We want to make sure that we found out a little bit more information about this person while we're building up that rapport and building that trust, and that we're referring these folks to the appropriate party. So your appointment, when you're on these appointments, you may actually find that your buyer hasn't taken any of the necessary steps to get a pre-approval. So we have no idea what this person is actually able to buy at this point in time, what their credit looks like, or anything along those lines. So what I recommend when it comes to starting to get into those nitty-gritty questions where you're going to be finding out about somebody's financial details is utilizing what we call a permission statement. All right. So let's say that you've gotten on the phone, you've started your conversation with them, you know that they're looking to purchase a house. They've told you roughly how much they want to spend. Now we want to go ahead and dive in and ask some additional questions, right? So that permission statement would sound something like this. Awesome. Now that you've given me a little bit more details on what you're looking for and what you'd like to accomplish, I'd simply like to ask you a handful of questions and take some notes to make sure that I'm pointing you in the right direction and giving you everything that you're going to need from me as your realtor to help you through this process and get into your new home. Simple as that. We're just asking permission, letting them know that we're going to be asking questions and taking notes. Once they give you the okay to ask questions and take notes, you can ask them anything that you want. Make sure that you keep it professional in the lines of them purchasing or selling a home, but you can ask them any question that you want pertaining to that. And it's completely fair game. And they know that you're going to start asking questions and start diving in. So this is a really good way to take control of that conversation so that you can start leading that horse to water so that it can eventually drink. All right. Overcoming objections. Again, we're going to focus on this formula: acknowledge, rebuttal, and transition. And then also going for the close. Once you've overcame all of the objections, we want to focus on going for the close and getting that agreement signed, whether it's a buyer's agreement or a listing agreement. And then if we're not closing down on the agreement, what we need to focus on at this point in time is close them on meeting with your lender or your preferred lender partner, so that we can get them into the pre-approval process, find out how much home we can actually start shopping for. So at the end of the overcoming your objections in this contact or this client meeting, we want to make sure that we go for a close, whether that's a buyer agreement, a listing agreement, or whether that's referring them off to one of our partners so that we can get this process started. All right. The number of closings is going to be based on our success every step of the process. We need to make sure that we have a strong number of dials every single day, a good number of appointments from those dials. And we also need to make sure that we close those appointments so that we can begin touring properties or prepping our home lists that we're going to be sending out to those new buyers or sellers that we're working with. So a number of closings is extremely important. Now, in order to calculate our future income, we have to look at the past. We can base our future income on our past performances. In order to do this, you need to efficiently break down all of the metrics we have laid out in this presentation. So take a moment to write this down, you guys. And if you're not tracking these things currently, I highly recommend you start tracking them going forward. How many dials on average does it take for you to schedule an appointment? How many appointments on average does it take for you to win a buyer or listing agreement? How many listings agreement does it take for you to get a deal closed inside of 3 months? And how many closings have you had from that buyer or listing agreements? Right. So we want to track all of these numbers every step of the way. What this is going to be able to do for us is if we find that out of every 100 dials that we make, we are generating 4 appointments. And out of those 4 appointments, we're closing one of those down into a listing agreement. And then out of those 3, or let's say a buyer's agreement, and then out of those folks that we're closing down to the buyer's agreement, 1 out of every 4 buyer's agreement turns into a closed deal inside of 6 months. Right. That means if we want to go ahead and we want to consistently see this exact same level of performance, we need to put 100 dials every single day and on those leads and start with the very base of our fundamentals, which is contacting our contacts and putting ourselves in an opportunity to win more closings, win more contracts, and then ultimately win more closings. So this is going to boil down to a law of percentages for you guys. A certain percentage of your calls are naturally going to become appointments. A certain percentage of appointments are going to become agreements, and a certain number of agreements are going to become closings. So it's important to track all of these metrics so that you can calculate your future income. Now, once you get these buyers on the phone, a super easy way to steer the call is by using an acronym called LP Mama. Now, I don't know if everybody's heard of LP Mama on here. We've mentioned it several times in the past through our trainings, but this is the pertinent information that you're going to want to gather when you meet with a buyer. So when it boils down to location, is there a particular location that you are looking to move to, and where is that location? All right. Is it a specific neighborhood? Is it a specific school district? Is it a particular community? Are we looking for 55 plus? Right. So we need to break down their location of where they're looking to buy. We also want to break down their price. So if you've taken the time to work out your budget so that you know how much home you can afford, what are we looking at? Do you have a specific price range that you're looking to stay within when it comes to purchasing a home? Have you broken down what your monthly payment's going to look like? Those kinds of things, right? Motivation, I would actually say, is the most important aspect of this because it's where you can build the most rapport. So if you find out that someone has a newborn that is on the way and they need to expand and get a larger house because their family is expanding, that's a pretty good motivational piece. That's something that I would start prying on, and I would start asking questions. Do they have other kids currently? Is this going to be their first child? Maybe you find out that they've got another child that has a t-ball or a softball game later on in the day or this week. That's something that you're going to want to take a mental note of and log in your CRM, so that the next time you call that lead, you can bring it up and say, hey, how did the softball game go? Did you guys win? That's the kind of thing that's going to help build trust with your very next phone call right out of the gate. So any information that you gather in this call, you want to be able to log that as notes and leverage that in later conversations. For example, I brought on a new client with Leads to ROI just yesterday. And when I was speaking with that particular gentleman, I found out that he has a red healer, and that red healer's name is Ginger, and it's a female dog. So that's something that I can bring up in our next conversation and chat with him about. And he might even be on here right now today. Doesn't look like he's on yet, but no. So that's one of the things that anytime I hear anything that's personal when I'm in a call, that something that's personal that could be meaningful for another conversation down the road to help build that rapport, I write it down and take note of it. It's extremely important to build that trust with your clients. And when you remember those little details, it goes a very, very long way. Somebody says, man, that person actually took the time to remember this about me or my kids or my family or my animals. And it's just going to help build that trust with you, right? And so I have those notes logged on pen and paper, and I also have them logged in my CRM. That's just the way that I prefer to operate. I write down my notes on paper while I'm on the call. As soon as I hop off the call, I go ahead and type up a synopsis of the notes that I wrote. And you guys, the notes that I write on clients is like a full page per person or more. Sometimes it will go 3 or 4 pages, depending on the amount of info that I gather while I'm on that call. So I might have a series of notes in my CRM that's 2 paragraphs long. I might have half of a novel written out when everything's all said and done, depending on how that call went and how much information that I gathered. But I know that that info is going to be a very pertinent piece of the puzzle when it comes to converting that lead over, is building that rapport, acknowledging that relationship, and not only taking things from a professional standpoint, but also getting somewhat personal with them. Because at the end of the day, these clients aren't just buying EXP or Remax or whatever brokerage you're with. They're working with you because of the relationship that you have developed with them and the trust that you have built. So the more information you have about your contacts, the better you're going to be. Agents. We want to find out whether or not they're currently working with an agent. This is literally the question that figures out whether or not you're wasting your time. So there's a couple of different ways to ask this. Are you currently working with an agent is perfectly fine. What we found is when you ask it that way, people will say yes, just to try to get you off the phone. Right. So maybe they've got an aunt that just got licensed, said, yeah, I'm currently working with an agent. My aunt's an agent. But that doesn't mean they have a signed buyer's agreement with that individual. So another way that you could ask is, have you signed a buyer's representation agreement with another agent? And when you ask something a little bit more forward like that, the folks that are going to have that knee-jerk yes, I'm already working with an agent, it'll stop them in their tracks, and it will give them it'll stop them in their tracks, and you'll more than likely get the response that they're not working with an agent because they don't have a signed buyer agreement. They haven't signed an agreement. They're not technically tied to anyone. We also need to find out where they're at in the mortgage process. What have you done to get started with your pre-approval process on your mortgage? Do you have a pre-approval? Are you working with a lender? These are all different questions that you can ask around this mortgage aspect of LP Mama. But it's important to know, are you paying cash? Are you financing? Have you taken the steps to figure out what you're pre-approved for in that financing? And then last, you're going to set an appointment. So I always recommend that if you're going to be meeting a client for a tour and you're going to meet them, this is the first time you're going to go and meet a client. You don't know them from Adam. Maybe you've done a little bit of Facebook stalking on them, which I highly recommend when you're calling and reaching out to these leads. What I do while I'm calling agents is the phone is ringing and I am on one of my other screens and I'm looking up that agent's Zillow profile. I'm looking up their realtor profile. I'm looking up anywhere where I can find information so I can see how many transactions this agent's done, what type of business are they currently doing, who's their targeted audience going to look like. I'm trying to figure all that stuff out. So from the agent perspective, what I'd highly recommend for you guys while you're making that call, look them up on LinkedIn, look them up on Facebook, look them up on Instagram while you're dialing through your list. And if you see any information that catches your eye on one of their profiles, go ahead and screenshot that and save it to your notes in your CRM, whether that's actually, I don't know if you can save a screenshot in KV Core, but you can in Leads to ROI. I know that for sure. So if you're using Leads to ROI, go ahead and take a screenshot of that info and plug it into your notes. If you're in KV Core, I'm not sure if you can post a photo into your notes section. So you guys may just have to go ahead and type that out and plug that in. But gathering that information about your leads when you're calling them gives you some really key insights for your call that you're about to have. So I highly recommend go ahead and picking up the phone or picking up while you're dialing and picking up the phone, look at their profile so you can gather more info. Now, before you meet them at a tour, there have been like some serious horror stories that I've read in the last 6 months about agents being alone in a house with individuals. And so I'm going to say, do this at your own discretion, but I do recommend the first time you meet with a buyer or a client to meet them at a local Starbucks or a coffee shop before you go and show houses. That way you can get a little bit of a better feeling of that individual and who they are. I just hate to see somebody go to a tour and have something happen. So I do highly recommend meeting those folks at a local Starbucks before you go and actually start searching for properties and start showing homes. Now,
and I'll tell a family member or friend the home address that you're going to be meeting at, just in case you don't reply. Someone knows where you went.
Absolutely. That is a very good that's a very good caveat to add on to there. Now, based off of what we've covered today, I'd like to open the floor to you guys, and I'd like some of the audience to kind of pitch in. Is anybody currently tracking these metrics right now?
No,
You're not, Aaron?
no, I just joined up with you guys earlier this week, so I'm slowly getting the snowball built up.
Very cool. Now, which did you join up? You joined up under Beano University, correct?
Correct.
How's that been going for you? How much have you gotten set up so far?
I'm still at that inputting all the search criteria. Still plugging away at that when I can.
Definitely, it is a pretty long process, but the good thing is you only have to do it once.
No, exactly.
So I'd recommend dedicating some time to that and getting that knocked out. So what you're going to find, and what location are you in, Aaron?
Tacoma, Washington.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, I know the area well. I'm in Eastern Washington now, but I was in Kirkland for 12 years recently. Ads library. There's a lot of ads running in your market right now. I just know that because we've got clients in your location. But let's just take a look at Tacoma really quick and see what we've got.
And he was the gentleman actually that I was able to get the IDX feed working for in Washington.
Awesome.
That's right. Thanks, William.
Yes.
Awesome.
So,
there were some issues in Washington, so that's good. That's good.
yeah. Normally in the past, we weren't able to. We had to run completely different ads for clients in Washington.
Awesome. Well, Tacoma definitely looks a lot better than Seattle does. 2,100 ads in Tacoma. If we take a look at Seattle, Seattle has, no, that's not correct. Let's go. Just go Seattle. And then I'll pull location. Seattle's got over 1,000 more listing or more real estate ads that are running right now. So if you plug that in about $10 cost per day, you'd probably be looking with that IDX ad, probably around $6 cost per lead. $4 to $6 cost per lead. I'm going to say 6 on the high side. So if you do let's just say a $500 budget on this, you're looking at about 83 leads that you'd get monthly if you had a $500 budget. So what I'd like for you to start doing, Aaron, is when you start generating these leads, I'd love to see you start tracking your call metrics that you're making to them. And what I'd like for you to do is keep like a notepad handy, so that when you get a notification for that lead to come in, if you're calling within that 2-minute mark, I want you to just write a check mark down, like do a running tally. So that way you can stay consistent with your leads and keep that follow-up going. You're going to find if you're calling them within a 2-minute window, you're going to have a much higher likelihood of them answering the phone and then converting that lead over. But then I'd like for you to actually continue that. And how many of those calls, how many of those answers are you getting are actually turning into an appointment? How many of those appointments are turning into a listing or a buyer's representation agreement? And how many of those agreements are turning into a closing inside of 3 months?
Yeah, the whole reversing engineering metrics that you just showed us earlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that? Have you seen anything like that before?
I've heard about it, but haven't seen it really in place. I haven't used it myself, I should say.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It's something that once you start putting that system in place and you start really tracking the numbers, it's going to open up a whole new world or level for your marketing, because then you're going to start going, okay, well, if I just allocate this much additional resource here, I'm going to profit this much more on this end. Right. So it's really going to boil down to, okay, now that I have this system in place, it gives us the ability to plug and play. Okay, so I'm averaging $6 per lead. This is how many leads I'm averaging per month with my $500 spend. This is what my conversion rate looks like. Now we can go ahead and scale at 1,000. We can scale at 2,000. We can scale at 3,000 and maintain that same level of profitability and return on investment. But we're actually growing the amount of dollars that are coming into our pocket every single month and every single closing, because now we have a scalable, trackable system from A to Z. So it's very important. And I recommend you guys, as you're going and closing business, set up a certain percentage that you're comfortable with to put back into the business out of every single transaction. Most agents that I work with that are top performers take anywhere from 30 to 40% of each transaction to put back into their business. Now, of course, there's a certain allocation of that goes towards taxes right out of the gate, or from square one. But if you guys take a certain percentage of that closing and allocate it directly towards your marketing budget and the growth of your business, especially if you have all of your numbers and metrics tracked A to Z, you're going to start scaling your revenue up. And that's the most important piece to all of this, is helping you guys scale that revenue. So this that about concludes this training, unless we've got more questions or we've got more folks that are on here that kind of want to dig a little bit more into it. Do we have any other questions, or anybody want to unmute their mic and have anything to say?
Also, if you're having a problem, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sue.
Now, I just wanted to verify that if we're using the leads to ROI system for making our calls, that does track for us automatically, doesn't it, Bryan?
Bryan, you're muted.
So leads to ROI will track your calls. It's also going to track, and we have it set to record those calls for you guys. You can, of course, turn that setting off if you choose to, but I'd recommend everyone leaving them on. Everybody on your guys' recorded calls, feel free to jump in on either Monday, Wednesday, or Friday for our support hours. If you have an objection that you had a hard time overcoming, if you felt like you had a lead that was on the verge of an appointment, but you just couldn't close it down, if you just need a second look at a call to see if you feel somebody's real or not, bring it up to us. We can go ahead and pull that contact up from your leads to ROI, and we can listen to that recording on the spot, and we can coach you guys the best way to handle that call or to work that lead or contact to get them to the next stage that you need them to be in. All right, I'm actually going to pull up the leads to ROI ISA account really fast, because there's a massive amount of dials that are in there, and that just makes it easy for me to show reporting. All right, you guys. So everything gets tracked in the database. Everything gets tracked in the system. So one thing that you guys can see right here is that the very first thing is we're looking at from February 15th through March 17th. And through this timeline, roughly 1 month, we're looking at 9,349 calls that have actually been answered. All right, these are callbacks into the system that were missed by the rep. We actually call right back to those immediately, but because of the rep's location, the phone doesn't transfer through to them. So we contact these folks back immediately. And it also is going to give you a breakdown on the number of calls. Now, one way that I highly recommend using this is I like to go based off of call durations, right? So if this call was 60 seconds or longer, we can go ahead and we can update this. And now here's a list of 60-second or longer calls that have gone through. So we've got a good list of calls where we've connected to individuals. We've actually gotten folks on the phone and we're meeting with them. We're either live transferring them over to an agent via warm transfer, or we're booking an appointment directly with them. You can see some of these calls go on for 6 minutes. Some of these calls go on for 7 minutes. Some of them go on for 4, right? What I classified personally to be an actual call that will lead somewhere, or say like a presentation with somebody. If you've been on the phone for at least 7 minutes with somebody, that's where I start to deem this a call where we've gathered enough information and we found out as much as we need to about that person to be able to progress to the next step. Right. Of course, if you're really, really good, you can get on that call, gather the information, be off it within 3 to 4 minutes. But in that event, we haven't done any rapport building in that call. We've just said, awesome, what are you looking for? Tell me what you want in a house. Okay, give me some more details about what else we should look for. Okay, awesome, I'm going to get a list together and send it out to you, or I'll meet you at property X, Y, and Z. I highly recommend taking that phone call a little bit longer, taking your time and getting to know your actual contact, so that way you have a higher level of conversion with that lead. That rapport is the most important aspect. But yes, you guys will be able to jump into your reporting. If you're making your dials through leads to ROI, you're going to be able to see all of those calls that are in here. You can actually click on the little caret and it will pull up a call recording where you can push play and you can listen to that call. So that if you're on the road and you answer a call from a client and you're not able to take notes on that conversation, you now have the ability to go ahead and re-listen to your message so that you can log proper notes on that call. So some really cool things with that leads to ROI platform, with the leads to ROI platform around that. Now Colin is also adding a little thing here into the chat for you guys. It is recommended to make dials 2 hours a day, 2 days a week, and be in a quiet place and dial from a laptop. Call your follow-ups, people previously spoken to first. I like that. Now, the reason that I 100% agree with this, contacting the folks that you spoke to first, when I block out time for dialing, the very first thing that I do is I go through my follow-ups. It's going to help get my vocal cords ready for all the other calls and conversations I'm going to have throughout the rest of the day. It's going to help me kind of get on point and load up my lips with everything that I need to say for the rest of that day while I'm making calls. Of course, every conversation that you have is different and it can go in multiple directions, but just getting yourself kind of in a focus and in a mindset of, hey, we're going to go in power dial. We're going to take a ton of no's and we're going to take those yeses. And it's going to take a lot of no's for us to get to a yes. So you just got to keep the thick skin, keep smiling and dialing, and keep plugging away. I like the 2 hours a day for block time, but instead of doing 2 days a week, I would recommend 5 days a week doing a 2 hour block call, right? And that's of course is going to boil down to the number of leads that you have coming through your system. But once you have generated and you are generating a steady flow of leads, once you're at like month 4, 5, 6, and you've had a pool of 100 leads coming into your database every single day, that's really where you need to be on the phones every day and have a set block time where you're going to go through and call your leads. And again, if you've reached a level to where you don't have the time to block that out and make those calls, it's time to actually hire an ISA to step in and make those calls for you so that you can focus on your highest money producing activities.
And Ryan, just so you know, our ISA's appointment average call number before they reach an appointment is usually their 4th or 5th call. Usually when they're making the appointment.
That is good to know. You guys, Colin is a 15-year ISA. He's been making these calls on agents' behalf for a long time, and he's extremely skilled. And he is training our ISA team, and so that's why he's got all of those statistics.
It's a numbers game, so you have to know to play the numbers the right way, so that way you can stack it in your favor. That way you're also going to find which lead sources you're getting 2 answers per 2 hours. Some lead sources you're going to get 2 answers per 10 calls. So you'll also begin to figure out which lead sources are producing a lot quicker.
Absolutely.
Sue's got a question. Bryan, can you state again, what are the best times of day to call?
Absolutely.
Everyone has their own times. I've got like 3 time zones or 3 time sets I use. What do you use, Bryan?
So I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen and just show some more data points from Conversionly on this. That was actually an aspect that they covered in here. So this is just a breakdown of percentages for answers that they have personally seen in their platform. This actually really well correlates to ours, and that is why we actually put almost these exact time slots. We're actually off. So we did 9 to 11 was when we saw about 22%. And then 11 to 2 was another time frame for us. But we didn't see the 22. We saw 18%. We saw the most.
Yeah, but we're also
4 and
covering
7.
4 time zones.
But this is pretty darn accurate. 22% of the answers came between 9 a.m. and 1 or came between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. What? That doesn't make any sense. This is 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. They did this is a mistake in their times. So it was between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. Right. And then we take a look between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., 22%, and then 4 to 7, 25%. So between 4 and 7 is going to be your best time to get somebody on the phone, hands down. Folks are driving home from work. You've got really good opportunity to get those folks.
Also, things like this, bad weather. If it's bad weather outside in your area, most people are going to be staying indoors, most likely to answer. Things like that. So if you're normally going to schedule, you do your calls for Thursday and today is Wednesday, you got a snowstorm coming in and everyone's already back from the grocery store, you're going to have triple the answer rate during that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, are there any other questions on today?
Thank you for the information.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for. We want to help empower you guys to see success. Awesome. Well, I will go ahead and conclude this live training for today. Next week, we are going to be covering the Google advertising. Sorry, we had to push that one back, you guys. I just want to make sure that it's perfect before I put it in front of you. And I want to make sure that any of the new updates and changes that Google has made, that I'm showing you guys with the new regulations of how to do it so that you don't get yourselves in trouble. So we're going to make sure that we've got that dialed in for you guys next week.
Thank you all for joining us.